Good afternoon. My name's Aled, and I'm going to be presenting along with Merrin today. Hi, Merrin.
Hello.
So we've assuming that everybody's actually joined the meeting so far. So today we're going to be talking about our project, which is called OPTIC, about understanding older and younger people's perspectives and imaginaries of climate change. So there are a couple of interactive bits in here, and we're going to be using a website called Mentimeter. I'll talk you through all of that. It's fairly easy to use, and it'll be quite a good way for people to just add your own thoughts. So welcome. So today we're going to be talking, so it's going to be shared between myself and Merrin, and also Elwyn and Carol, who also work on the project. They're going to be adding bits as well. So we're going to introduce the project, and then Merrin's going to talk about the methods, and we're also going to be talking about the impact of what we've done so far, and also some of the challenges and opportunities. So let's start. First of all, you probably kind of grasp that what we're trying to do with this project is we're actually making a comic book. So first of all, we're going to introduce ourselves as kind of comic characters. So Merrin is Merrin, and me, and Carol and Elwyn, who are also chipping in today, as well as Charles, Deb, and Tavy. So it's a project between, most of us are based at Swansea University, but also Charles is based at Aberystwyth, and then it's all under the banner today of CADR, the Centre for Ageing and Dementia Research. So also you'll notice that in the chat we've got the option to ask questions, and also some of the links to various things as well. So let's move. Yeah, and so one of the things that's been really critical to our project, I can't actually see who's in the webinar today, but maybe some of you who've joined are actually part of our advisory group. But this is a one-year project where we've been lucky to have a group of advisors who've really helped us to shape what we do, and that's going to come through quite a bit in our presentation today. Would be a chance to hear some of the voices that have helped us as researchers to develop the project, and the people on the advisory group are both 65 and above, and also below 65. So our project is essentially about exploring climate change perceptions and imaginaries meaning the future and how things could be. And it's about getting people who are older and people who are younger together in the same space. So the people involved in our advisory group, some of them work for governmental organisations, charities, they're also educators. It's a really great group of people who definitely helped us to get to where we are today. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use Mentimeter, and it's a chance for you to kind of give your views on what you think might be the challenges of doing intergenerational climate change research. So the Mentimeter gives you the option to give 3 different responses. You can give 1 if you want, or you can give 2 or 3. So the way it works is that you can do it on your mobile phone. If you use, there's an option called Google Lens, which allows you to scan the QR code, or it might actually be easier just to take the code and put it on a different window on your laptop. It gives you a bit more of a chance, or your computer gives a bit more of a chance to actually enter a longer sentence. So what I'm going to do now is just give everybody a couple of minutes to let that work. I'm also going to have to, I'm going to switch screens and put it actually on the main screen. So yeah, what you should be able to do now is you should be able to follow that QR code, or just go to menti.com and put in the code 84040214. And what you'll see now is all the different responses are starting to come up on the screen, and it's all anonymized. So, and sometimes if it's kind of, if things are the same words come up, it actually creates a bit of a word cloud. So we're getting collaboration, stereotypes, opposing views, affects people differently.
Just a second, Alid, we can't see your screen. So I just need to press that. There we are, we can now.
Okay. Also got the word essential. Great, it's starting to take shape now. Conversation that's needed, that's really good. And once some of these these responses are come in, it creates quite a nice word cloud, so we can send that out afterwards so that everybody can see what's come together. Merrin, would you okay, let's stop there. So okay, actually getting a few more things coming in. Sometimes it takes a while for things to come together. So yeah, looking after future generations, that's important. Stereotypes, and the word collaboration. So definitely collaboration is really important. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to go back to the main presentation, and we will look at some of the ideas that came through from people on our advisory group. So looking to the sort of the published literature about intergenerational projects, and particularly working on climate change. Climate change is seen by the World Health Organization as the single biggest health threat facing humanity. And also in the research for healthy aging, climate change is also one of the very biggest challenges that we face. So we're interested, one of the reasons why we wanted to have that intergenerational aspect and working with younger people as well, is we all age, and we're interested in how climate change affects our health into the future, and particularly that future generations have got a significant burden to actually organise services. So what we really wanted to do was to find a way that gives a voice to both older and younger generations. Let's move forward. And yeah, kind of building on some of the things that you've all contributed in the Menti poll. Solidarity is really important, and debate and knowledge sharing. So debate is also quite critical, that people will have different views. And I think also one of the things that we kind of thought about as we're starting the project was that the different generations have got their own sort of ideas of what are sustainable behaviours, and that sustainability isn't just a new thing, it's something that people have been doing for a very long time. certainly my grandparents were very good at recycling things. And this has come through in lots of the different research and the stories that we've uncovered. And actually, this last point here is that that the actual practice of meeting people, of actually sharing views and sharing space and time is actually beneficial to well-being in itself. So let's move to these are some of the things that our advisory group members shared with us. So one of the people involved in our project is Lucy, and she's involved in a big project called UNESCO Bridges, which is about kind of working with UNESCO, which is a UN agency, and kind of allowing knowledge to come from the community level. In our case, we're looking at places which are roughly about an hour away from Swansea. And she says that it falls to all of us to help produce and engage with creative ideas and to provide tools to navigate the turbulent and choppy waters. So, you know, this idea that that we are facing choppy waters has always been part of our project. We've known that this is a substantial challenge. But one of the interesting things here that Lucy says is that that we also have to think about the non-technological differences. So some of the kind of the simple things that we can do rather than things which rely too heavily on using IT. I'm just going to share another perspective. So another point here is about sort of like who is interested in climate change. So one of the people involved in our project is Tom Bateman, and he works with Beth Winter, an MP in the Cynon Valley in South Wales, and he reflected on these climate change summits and workshops that have been done in the last few years, and he said that actually that climate change hasn't inspired much engagement from constituents. And also this perception that maybe climate change is a middle class issue. And this is definitely something that we'd be very keen to think about, and it's something that we'll show as we go through this talk today about the different the efforts made to just reach a diverse group of people, and also the cities thing as well. So we've looked at one case site in Swansea itself, but the 4 others are they're actually outside the city. They're in different kinds of geographies. And yeah, also it's what's been really important has been about creating space for discussion. So Jennifer Twelvetrees, she's been involved in the advisory group right from the start. She's been involved in lots of different projects associated with CADR and Swansea University over the years. And when I spoke to her, she talked about what had inspired her in the past, and she talked about going to the Greenham marches in the 1980s. And something that she said resonates, and that's just that the camp wasn't just about weapons. So they were protesting against the nuclear weapons being stored in Greenham. My mum went on these marches as well, and she said it was also about the environment and sharing food, about Mother Earth. So we were quite taken by this idea of our kind of research workshops as being like creating a camp, creating a kind of a tent, a space where people can meet. And it became really important for us that we would offer the chance for people to have some food, and also just to take time to reflect, and also to be pretty creative as well. So a lot of the work we're going to show you now was and it is very creative. Let's move to the next one. Yeah, and I think kind of coming back to something that Lucy says, that the work isn't just about older people. So the project is run through CADR, and it's funded through a program which is about healthy aging, that we're also looking at poverty, education, gender, location and culture. And I think that really comes through in some of the things that people have said. And also coming back to the techno side of things, we've been lucky to be able to work alongside Laura Sorvala, who's an illustrator. We're going to present a little bit of her work in a moment, but the main output from our project is to make a tangible comic, you know, something you can touch and feel. So there's been a lot of our project has been about people using their hands to make things. Yeah, and another partner in our project has been Natural Resources Wales. So Russell Diath from Natural Resources Wales, he's been part of our discussions, and he gave us some inspiration to use creative methods from work that that they've been doing on a big project called Nature and Us, and they've been gathering different impressions and thoughts about the state of nature in Wales, and he told us about one case where they took lots of information that they've gathered from focus groups and from surveys, and they gave them to a sound artist who made them into converted them back into actual spoken word, and he talks about when that spoken word was given to actually the board of Natural Resources Wales, and he said that one of the members of that board said, for the first time we can really hear what people think. So that's also built on what Lucy said in terms of just hearing real voices and just hearing the diversity of how people talk about issues of nature and climate change. I think we can maybe add the link to those sound recordings. I'll do that in a bit. But yeah, they're very powerful and very interesting. So now we come to methods, and I'm going to come back to Merrin here. So Merrin's going to be talking about this stage now. Thank you.
Hello, Prynhawn da, everyone. It's lovely to see some of our participants and advisory group and Laura as part of the participants today. So, and everybody else, welcome, and thanks, Aled, for talking about why we're doing the project. So a little bit about the methods then. If I can work out how to, there we are. So this is an overview of the project, really, and this was from a figure that Aled developed for an article that he led on working with an advisory group. So we can see how the advisory group has worked with us throughout. Oh my goodness me, Aled, I think you're pressing something. Where have we got to? Right, wait a minute. Is that changing for everybody else? I'm not pressing anything. There we are. Methods. Right, okay. Yeah, so the blue shows how we've worked with the advisory group all the way through. But this essentially shows the format of the whole project. So we worked with an advisory group right at the beginning to sort of help develop what we're actually going to do, as Aled has spoken about. And then we've done 5 creative workshops, which I'll talk a little bit about the methods in a minute, but this was with a group on an urban street in Swansea, a BAME walking group, a care home and a primary school together, and one workshop in a post-industrial town, and then with a farming family as well. And then from those workshops, we are creating a comic that Laura is illustrating and creating the stories from, and we'll talk a bit about that in a minute. And then we're going to be using this comic to engage wider publics and decision makers. We're running 2 interactive exhibitions. One has already happened actually at the ERFI Steddfod. Again, we'll talk about that a bit in a minute. And one is happening at Swansea University throughout August and September, and it'd be wonderful if you could come along to that. And then at the end, we're going to have a learning event in September. Again, we'll put a bit of information about that in a minute too. So that's kind of the general overview. So I'm first of all going to talk about this bit. So here we are. Why are we using comics, and what are comics? So comics are not just about superheroes. Comics or graphic novels, if you prefer, are really wonderful tools for research and communication, engaging people. What are they? They are essentially sequential art. So pictures next to each other, images next to each other, this can include text as well, in a deliberate sequence intended to produce an aesthetic response in the viewer. And as Pekar says, comics are words and pictures, and you can do anything with words and pictures. So we've used them for a variety of reasons, really. They, as I say, they can be used, because it's words and pictures, they can communicate complex ideas. They can promote learning and understanding and retention. They provide a frame through which to think and a structure for storytelling. And this is particularly useful for geographical issues such as climate change, because you can explore space and time. So time throughout the panels of the comic, and space, so you can have close-ups to focus on something important, or you can show a whole scene. They're really flexible, and there's lots of different ways to use them. I should say, just going back to this slide, these two on the right are some environmental comics that I would highly recommend. So very different, but really good recent environmental comics. And get in touch if you'd like ideas for more as well, because there's quite a few out there now. They provide different ways to represent meaning as well. So as I say, they've got images and text, but also you can represent meaning through colour, through emanata, for example. So if somebody's like stressed, or if something smells, for instance, you might have steam coming off, or stressed, you might have sweat coming off their head. All these sorts of things can be used to portray stories and issues. And also, interestingly, I think comics can be novel to some people, so a new way to explore things, but can also be a familiar way to explore new issues. So, for example, at the Eisteddfod, somebody came along and looked at the comics on the back panel that we had behind us and said, comics, but climate change isn't funny, is it? And that got a whole conversation going around, you know, about how comics aren't just about funny things, but also about why climate change isn't funny. So it was kind of a nice inroad into a wider discussion. And also a year 6 pupil at Oystermouth Primary School at the workshop there, he said about how cartoons are for thinking about other things that you normally wouldn't think about. So and they, in the primary school, they were kind of used to working with comics, but maybe not so used to working with climate change. So it was a way of using a known medium to explore a less known topic. So that's part of why we're working with comics, and there's a lot of potential there, I think. So while we were thinking about how we could, you might want to be clicking on this because there's another Mentimeter poll here, but just to add a little bit of background why we did this. So while we were thinking about what the comic could actually look like, we kind of thought, well, this is daft, us discussing it just amongst ourselves. We should ask other people, potentially people who are going to read the comic, what they think. So we put together a short survey. This was in February sort of time, and shared the survey link with as many people as we could, and we had 98 responses. And we're on the Mentimeter now, you've got 3 of those options that people were given and asked to say how much they liked or disliked the pictures, but it wasn't really just if they liked them or disliked them. It was about what they thought worked best for a comic that would engage older people and younger people about climate change. So we were interested in, you know, style, colour, content, etc. So now I stop the share, don't I think, and then it will go over to Aled's Mentimeter page, I hope, will it? No? Yeah, there we are. Okay, so we have number 3 is the favourite so far, so the grayscale one. I'll leave it up there for a second, and then I'll show you the results of the survey that we did as well, so see how it compares to what you think on there too. So there were actually more options than this, but we thought we'd just give you the idea of what we did here and then talk a little bit about the results. Anyone else would like to vote? Hopefully people have still got the link, or let's just see if it's in the chat. Yeah, Carol's popped it in the chat again. Oh, there we are. So somebody likes the one in colour. So as I say, yeah, this survey went out and it had some sort of preferences questions and some more open-ended questions as well. So I'll show you a little bit about the sort of things that people are saying as the open-ended questions here too. Okay, I will close that. But so far from our 3 votes, we've got a preference for the grayscale one. So let's see how that compares with what our participants for the survey thought. Our survey said, here we are. So along the bottom, essentially these are ordered into mean preferences. So 5 is I like it a lot. 1 is I do not like it at all. And remember, this is related to not actually whether you like the picture, but the question was about whether you think it would be good for a comic for older and younger people about climate change. Okay, so somebody might have really liked the picture on the right, for instance, but not thought it would be appropriate for this particular comic. So the favourite one was the one on the left, so the black and white one, followed by the one in sort of the pinky colours, and then the least favourite one was on the right. But really interestingly, some people had the one on the right as their favourite, and each one was somebody's favourite. So we had 98 responses, as I say, and there's really quite a spread. So luckily we hadn't just asked people this, we'd asked people for open responses as well, and we had open responses from nearly everyone, so we had quite a lot of data about what people like to see and don't like to see in a comic. So we coded these, so just open responses. People could write as much or as little as they want about anything, any ideas or comments about comic styles, and then we coded them into likes and dislikes and into the different categories here. So out on top then came uncluttered, bold, clear and simple pictures, and even though the black and white one was the most favourite, people had put comments in about, even though that was my favourite, it would be good with colour. So that sort of style, but with colour, and colour came out as a really popular thing as well. Simple messages, few words. Some people like the sketchy style. I won't go through it all, but those are on there as what people really liked. Again, this was in free text boxes, so people could write whatever, and then we coded them to categorise them, essentially. And then this was what they disliked. So this is much fewer. So the maximum here is only 6. People didn't like ones that were too busy, too dull or dark, too many words, and a few other things there, but only one person mention those things. Okay, so this helped us and Laura sort of think about what sort of style would work for this particular comic. I should say as well, all of those were pictures that Laura had already done. So that's a bit of context about that, about various different projects as well. So some more comic-y, some not. And these were just a few of the open-ended responses that we had that were really useful. They were all really useful, actually. I've just picked out a few examples here. So, for example, it'd be good to include someone who is left-handed, something I never would have thought about, because we want to be as inclusive as possible. Facial expressions, body language, really important. Add some humour, avoid jargon. One 80-year-old had said about the uncluttered presentation style, and then be careful about stereotypes again. So this actually came up quite a lot about stereotypes, and this was in particular in relation to maybe young women not just having long light hair, for example. Okay, so moving on then, how did we get from the workshops to the actual comic that Laura is illustrating at the moment? Wow. So the workshops come in here. So as I say, there were 5 creative workshops. I'll go into a little bit more later about how they did actually vary. So they were all a different format. We were very flexible in how they actually worked. I'll talk a bit more about that later. But the plan was to have 5 3-hour workshops. So they didn't end up as 3 hours, all of them, because as I say, we were flexible, we needed to be. But altogether we had 66 participants. This did include 10 pilot participants. So our advisory group piloted the approach with us, and we actually worked with some of the data from the pilot workshops for the comic, because one story in particular just encapsulated the reasons why we were doing it, and it was just a really nice way to introduce the comic. So we did work with that data as well. So during the workshops, we carried out surveys before and at the end, so at the start and at the end, to get sort of top of mind responses, and then demographics at the end, and whether perceptions had changed throughout the workshop. We used an object activity. So this was when we had lots of objects laid out on a table. We used it as an introduction. So somebody would pick up maybe a stone and talk about why they'd picked up the stone, how it was related to climate change, and that got some really, really nice conversations going as well. Various objects picked up. We had all sorts of tractor, tea bags, a sand timer, lots of different objects. There isn't a picture there actually, but yeah. And then we had a game, a dice game, which I'll say a little bit more about in a minute, and then a creative activity. So this was largely up to the participants, which they did, but obviously we had to restrict it a little bit because there would only be a certain number of us at the workshop and we could only run 2 in parallel. So the options were a cut up and collage activity, a mobile interview, again we'll say more about each of these in a minute, an online mobile interview, a comics creation activity, and storyboarding. And we did manage to do all of these through the project in the different workshops, and each kind of had different affordances. They had different things that they showed us or helped us explore. So we're going to go through a couple of the panels from the comic that Laura has created and talk a little bit how we got there. And this is how Laura worked with the data. So she was given the workshop transcripts that were highlighted, bits that we thought might be interesting, interesting themes, for instance. but then went through and, you know, picked out bits that she thought were interesting, and looked for emerging themes and a personal human spark to the story, as she says there. So that's a quote from Laura for the paper that Alid's been leading on. And yeah, she's done an amazing job, as I'm sure you'll agree. So we'll show you a sneak preview. So these are the sketches that she's done so far. So first one then, this is just an example of how the game that we used led to stories for the comic. So the game was developed through the advisory group pilot, actually. So it was decided during the pilot session that, you know, we needed to make it a bit more fun, basically. So we thought up a game that added in an element of surprise, an element of chance. So you could roll the dice and you would say the sentence that the two die corresponded to. So you'd roll 2 and then say, for example, if it landed on 1 and 4, you would say, I imagine nature, blah, 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 blah. And then this got lots of conversations going, quick fire conversations. It was a real saviour for the school and care home workshop, because due to COVID, there was only me at the workshop and the teachers and the care home staff, obviously. But what I did was taught the children beforehand how to use the game, and then they taught the residents how to play it. So it was lovely. I mean, I was just going around giving them pencils and anything that they needed, and they were leading it themselves, which was really nice, and they really enjoyed that. And as I say, it got lots of really interesting conversations going. For example, here Oscar is saying to Margaret that I imagine one day nature may grow back and we may be a bit more climate friendly. And this is one of the comic pages that we took to the ears. And down in the right-hand corner, that's what he's saying there. So that quote's gone in there as part of that page from the care home. So it's just an example of how we got from the game to the comic. So that one is that one's penned in. That one's nearly there now. But the next ones are the sketches that Laura's been working on. This is another example of how we got to what was in the comic. Again, a penned-in version. This is from comics to comics. So during the school workshops and the care home workshops, so what we did, as I say, we had to be flexible with how each workshop worked. And for the school and the care home workshop, I went into the school in the morning, did the survey with the children who were going to participate, 12 children. That was 6 from year 2 and 6 from year 6, because year 2s already go into the care home once a week, and the year 6s already learn a bit about climate change. So we combined the two groups and we went up to the care home and had a session with them. But before the session in the care home, we learned how to play the game and talked a bit about climate change and what it means and what to expect at the care home, etc. And then we had the session at the care home. And then the next day I went back into the school and the year 6s made some comics. And all of the year 6s made comics. This one in particular, I'm afraid the quality of the scan isn't great, but this one in particular was 2 of the participants who went to the care home, and they focused on a story about snow that a few of the residents were talking about, actually. And so that made it into the comic as this here. So we can see, I don't know if you can see my cursor, probably not, but in sort of top middle, you got somebody climbing out of the window, because that's what one of the residents was talking about. One of the residents had a lovely story about ice skating on their school pond, which was brought forth by an object. So we had some ice skates, and that reminded her of that story, and she told this story, and others about sledging, etc., and playing in the snow. So this really sort of piqued the children's imagination, and snow featured a lot in the comics that they did the next day. Okay, so I shall pass over to Aled, because he's going to talk about mobile interviews and how they led to some of the comic pages as well. There we are.
Thanks, Marion. So yeah, this is another example of basically how we take effectively what we were gathering different stories from different people and then passing them over to Laura to build into the bigger picture. So what you can see in this case is what we call a mobile interview. I also kind of call them like a walking tour or a group walk, and it involves going to a place and then actually just walking around. And so the conversations are generally prompted by what's actually in the environment. So in this particular case, we went for a walk around Swansea. So actually Carol, Deb, Aylwin came on this. It's quite open-ended, and it's really interesting what different things come forward. So one of the people involved in this particular session, she had a young child actually in a buggy. So that also just changed the whole way that the conversation happened. And what has gone into the drawing produced by Laura is actually some of the discussions that we had in that street. So, for example, we started at a place that grows food in the space at the front of the building. So that's one of the things we're interested in. You know, is it a viable idea to use the space at the front of the building or turn car parks into gardens so that we can address sort of climate change in terms of biodiversity, but also in terms of actually growing things that people can eat. And actually, by walking along that particular street, we thought about, you know, would people actually really want to be eating the stuff that's grown on that street? And it kind of goes back to the earlier point of about actually having debate. So having a discussion about, you know, people coming forward with views that do challenge what we're thinking about. And we did get some people who weren't so keen on eating food grown on a road with cars and buses going along. So yeah, it's a really valuable method, and effectively when we come to the end of the project, the actual comic book will have lots of different the methods we use to make different frames of the comic will have come from lots of different sources. So I think the next one is the next one. Yeah, so this is what we call the online mobile interview. So it's a bit like actually being out in the street, but instead we use Google Earth and Google Maps. So it's a bit like this scenario in Zoom, and on the main screen we share a particular street, and we've also been doing things like finding out that Google Earth has got some people have kind of got they've used a drone to go above a particular place, and it's got 360-degree views of that particular place. Also on Google Street Map, some of the images go back 10 years or so. So it's been really interesting to explore different streets and different places, and actually to see in practice how climate change has affected different places. So this is one example of what we're calling the post-industrial settlement. So it's a place at the top of the valleys, and we did a workshop involving younger people and older people, and a local guide showed us around this particular place on the screen, and we stopped at a bridge, and it prompted this story, which is about how every August they have a duck race where they put plastic ducks in the river and see where they go. And it turned out that over the years that some years there was too much water, some years there was not enough water. So this has been created into a comic by Laura, So yeah, when you look at the detail, there's lots and lots going on, and it's really amazing to sort of see how that nugget of an idea, which we never knew was going to come through at all. We had no idea that people can talk about duck races, but it's something which is now in that comic, and hopefully it's a method that other people will use in the future, being able to just go on Google Earth and there is that sort of sliding time button that allows you to look at previous years. Okay, so now, yeah, I think Carol's going to talk about the storyboards.
Right, I think it's going to be a disembodied voice, but either way, I can chat to you about it. So basically, I think we can hear from the presentation and what Merrin and Aled have been talking about. This whole idea is we're conveying a story. We want to try and gather stories, and this is the process that we went here. The idea was initially to actually sort of develop this into a film, so it's going to be a storyboard, which is often quite often used prior to filming something, but we didn't really have the time during the workshops. But this worked really well, I think. So we got people to sit around first and tell stories that they felt were related to climate change. And this again followed on from the game that Merrin described earlier. And we just got people to sort of, reimagine things from different elements of their lives. What was what story could they bring forward that related somehow to climate change. And this was one where we had somebody really talked about in their youth, and litter is quite a common topic that popped up in various the activities. And they said, well, when we were younger, we used to go down the beach and we would do this pop bottling. And we would, they would go along the beach, and it was in the days where you used to be able to buy your drinks in glass bottles. And then what you could do then was return the bottles for a small sum, and you'd get a little bit of cash back. And the idea was that this was this was something they used to do over the summer, and they would actually, it was a little bit of an industry for them, and they would get some pocket money that they could then reinvest in sweets or magazines or probably comics, who knows. But the idea was that this was it was a story that everybody could get behind, and in the small group that we were discussing, it was an idea that was developed then by the other people in the group. And then so from this, I think you can see in the left-hand side of the slide there, we've got sort of a pre-drawn template. We just had empty boxes. And the idea was, as somebody was sort of telling the story and how other people were interacting and perhaps saying, but where was this, what was happening, that you would actually be able to create a very visual prompt, a bit of a visual roadmap in this series of drawings that helped basically tell the story in this very visual format. And of course, the idea is then that you can have what makes a good story is a character. There's something happening. There's a beginning, a middle, and end potentially, or you're trying to convey a message. And this is something then that was really sort of drawn out in this this comic in this storyboard, sorry, that you can see on the left-hand side there. And this, it's basically, you can add close-ups, you can add the little aspects to the characters to make them more interesting and exciting. And so from that stage there, that again has got converted into the comic that Laura has developed. But the idea, as well, as we were talking about this story and enlarging on it, we actually talked then about, well, this was a bit of an enterprise in this person's youth, but maybe we could do something similar on the larger scale. And so we actually sort of prompted discussions then around business models and business ideas. And in fact, it doesn't particularly show it here, but later on in the comic, we look at, well, can we look at solar panels and councils giving money back to people who use those? But so it was the idea from sort of quite a simple activity that could then turn into, as I said, a business model. And it helps when you're visually portraying this sequence of the story in this format. So I hope that sort of described a little bit about the idea of the storyboard to the comic.
Thanks, Carol. I'm just going to move on now. Also, this is one of the good things about kind of sustainable behaviours that have been going for a long time, which was certainly in the literature that we looked at. So now we're going to talk about Cutups and Collage. Aylwyn is going to talk now.
Oh, hi there. Yeah, hi. Yeah, another disembodied voice. So building on what we've heard here today, I mean, my particular take in terms of creative methods is using things like cut-ups and collage as a way of eliciting, different types of knowledge and perspectives. And during this project, really, what we were able to do in at least a couple of places was to use this method as a way of kind of creating something live in that particular context. So we made a collage. This particular collage, for example, here was one that was created up in the post-industrial spot where we had a workshop. But it's a way also of like, it contributes to the way that we can analyze the data as well. And we also used collage in the Steddfod. So I guess, I mean, collage and cut-ups are, I mean, a collage will be a set of sort of pictures that are relevant to what we're talking about, perhaps. Or sometimes they're not relevant, but they might make some connection. And we use things like paints and all kinds of found materials, really, to create a collage. A cut-up is slightly different in that it's a bit like a collage, but made of words. So in my particular practice, I like to take things like headlines, for example, from newspapers, and see if there's a way of looking behind the stories by just literally cutting them up or ripping them up and trying to see if there's anything new happening in that story by juxtaposing and bringing things together. So it's quite good. I found this was an opportunity really to use this method in quite a participative way, which was kind of new to me because I'd always used collages previously as a way of doing my own analysis. But it was fascinating, and it led to some quite amazing results, which I think are like quite profound in some respects. So again, going back to this particular collage here, we're looking at a community which has gone through the transition from coal to having lots of different renewable sources around that particular community. And the discussions, we had 3 groups making collages after we'd had the game, and we looked at the objects, and we ended up with 3 very different collages, one of which was looked at some of the flooding that happened locally, and then another one which looked at things like bees, and then this one here, which again specifically sort of seemed to reference some of the things that were happening around in that particular locality. The thing about collages in some respects is that it's compared to the storyboarding and perhaps the comics, it's actually it's less linear. So it works in a slightly different way in that we found it makes connections in different ways for us as the kind of research team. At the same time, it's a very democratic way of getting people to contribute, because basically everybody's allowed to have a bit of a Blue Peter moment, and most people are able to either rip pictures up or glue things onto other pieces of paper, and by doing that, what I found was that actually it's a way of also starting those intergenerational conversations. So if you look again at this particular collage, you'll see that there's a number of bees there, and there was a lovely moment where the older people and the younger people who were making this collage and one of the adjoining collages were talking about the importance of bees. And, you know, it came as news to some of the younger people that if the bees aren't here, we're not going to be here. So there was a lovely bit of learning that happened in that particular collage session. And then we also used the collage method in the Eisteddfod. So that was more using collage and cut up as a kind of a tool for engagement. Again, which I think it worked quite well, because it was a way of capturing what was going on in that moment in the Eisteddfod. You know, we were there for about 5 days in total, so it was a great way of capturing that. But I mean, also what you've got here is Laura's comic, which like sort of illustrates, you know, this particular point about the bees. So yeah, I think that's it really. We used the collages with the advisory group. So the initial ideas came out with the advisory group there. We used it in one of the situations, in one of the places where we had a workshop, and then we've used them as well in the Eisteddfod. And I'm also, like, you know, thinking about making some more collages as a way of just analysing some of the data that we've got already. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Erwin. Just one little thing to point out, that the version of the comic that you can see there on the right hand side, that's the working version. The final version will be a kind of a bit sharper. I think Marion presented one of the final versions in her first example. So we've covered a lot. Right, where next? So
could I just chip in 1 second? Because it is 1 o'clock, but we have got another half an hour. I wonder if, and we have got a few more slides, I wonder if anyone's got any questions, they could put them in the chat, and then we'll make sure we don't miss them, because there are some more slides that we think you'll find interesting, but we have got to an hour. Lovely, thanks. So pop questions in the chat if you've got any. Thanks.
Yeah, so it's been we have gone into quite a lot of detail today. So hopefully it's all been useful. So I'm going to talk a tiny bit about sort of we're looking again at the actual, where are we now on the this point here. Yeah, we're at the engagement stage. So we finished the workshops, and we're very close now to actually finishing the comic itself, and it's involved that process of kind of like bringing together lots of different elements from different workshops. So we will assemble bits of that have come from a walking conversation, bits that come from collage. So sharing practice. So yeah, as well as giving talks like this, and also Elwyn mentioned earlier on the Eisteddfod. The Eisteddfod was a really significant part of actually meeting people to kind of test some of these ideas. So lots and lots of more comics actually got created by children and their parents who came to the year of Eisteddfod at the end of May, at the start of June. We've also, because we've got an interesting collection of people on our advisory group, it's given us a perspective of sort of understanding how some of these ideas could end up in future policy. Also, Natural Resources Wales is a body that not only regulates the environment of Wales, but also has a very significant role in terms of promoting what will, you know, what educational aims, and also just getting people behind things like the Future Generations Act. And I think also that we've coming back to the sort of more academic side of things, we've written a journal article for a journal called the Journal of Responsible Innovation, which has been an interesting affair. That's basically about how quite often research projects just get done within universities and don't have as much scrutiny from advisory groups as our project has. So hopefully that article will be published and it will be open access for anybody to read. And next week we're going to be going to the British Society of Gerontology conference in Norwich to present some of his work, and also going to the Royal Geographical Society conference in London in August as well. So lots and lots of sharing of the practice, and it has just been a one-year project, so it's been a lot of stuff all going on at the same time. Moving on, yeah, these are some snaps that Merrin took from the ISEDBOD. Myself and Aylwyn wearing our beautiful Swansea University t-shirts, and yeah, just on the top you can actually see some of the collage activities of where people were sticking things together and adding their comments. So yeah, that was really, yeah, like I said, it was really interesting to see how people responded, to see how people you know, brought up climate change issues of specific to where they live as well. So yeah, just to kind of summarize the outreach side of things, this is something that Merrin has been also working quite hard on the educational side of things. Swansea University does a lot of work on climate change education, and there's an emerging network at the university which is to do with how that knowledge transfers to children and younger people, particularly working with primary schools. So hopefully we've provided some actual ideas of how other people working at the university can connect with different communities and connect with children as well. Yeah, and also we worked, this is a workshop that Merrin did, but she worked with some of the masters and PhD students who are looking at different research methods. Yeah, the list goes on. Also, Merrin and Deb both went to the CADR conference as well. So I'm sure many of you have seen elements of the OPTIC project emerging over time. So where are we now? So yeah, we finally got to stage number 5 of our project, which is sort of the learning event and beyond. So we're putting up an exhibition at the Taliesin at Swansea University sometime in August. So the exhibition will have extracts of the comic. We're also planning to have some of the cut-ups, some of the, you know, different things that people have contributed. So, you know, that although the comic is going to look shiny and beautiful, there's lots of other artifacts and objects, physical things that people have made and given to this process. So the exhibition will be a chance to see some of those things as well. And then importantly, on the 19th of September, and this is the final month of our project, September 2023, there's going to be a learning event at the university, which will involve, it'll be at the ON Institute, but it'll also involve spending some time at the exhibition as well. So the plan for that is to reflect on how some of these methods and some of these issues can influence design for the future. So particularly the design of places and the design of yeah, different measures to actually confront climate change, particularly for older people. So here's an invitation. If you want to come to the event on the 19th of September, please email, or you can just add some detail in the chat here today. So it's going to be a chance to meet different decision makers, also hopefully meet some people who've been involved in our projects as well, and you will also get the chance to have a copy of the comic. So yeah, it's on the 19th of September. I think it's going to start maybe 10 AM, but it'll be a good chance to actually see the work, meet the team, also to just add your own perspective, and just generally to you know, help us try and take some of these ideas forward, really. So this is the very end of of our presentation, Marian's going to reflect a little bit on some of the challenges and opportunities.
Yeah, so I will reflect very quickly because I realise we don't have much time. But yeah, just it's basically to say there have been some challenges, as there always are in this sort of research. I won't go through all this. This was for a presentation that we did a little while back. But just to say, yes, there were plenty of challenges. Some of those challenges were closely related to the project being intergenerational. So, for example, trying to get timings and places and activities that work well for both older and younger people. People have different needs and different volumes, for example. I learned very quickly that we weren't going to be taking the cups of dice to the care home, for example, because they made far too much noise. And just that there are plenty of solutions to these, some that we could do during this project, for example, be flexible. So each workshop ended up being totally different, really, and each worked in their own way. Some things that we'll take forward to further projects that we couldn't do in this one, for example, having a bigger team at the workshops, many factors contributed to not necessarily being able to have many of us at each workshop, for example, train strikes, UCU strikes, school strikes, etc. And also to redesign the survey to make it a bit easier for younger and older people to be able to do in potentially a shorter period of time. But despite all those opportunities, which I think we're learning from, all those challenges, sorry, which we're learning from, there's been so many opportunities and golly, it's been worth it. So these opportunities range from just people enjoying it, us enjoying it, building solidarity between groups, friendships, learning and understanding between different groups, new ideas, and providing a bit of agency to people in the climate change debate as well. Tom's words here echo what I just said about the constraints. I won't read that out, but just to say, you know, that was some feedback from the advisory group as well. And one thing that we've learned is that really in an ideal world, we should have involved the advisory group from the bid stage. Writing this bid was a very fast process, so we couldn't do that this time. But we're already thinking about new bids and building on this, and we will be trying to involve an advisory group at a much earlier stage before we even start writing new bids. In future, so that's really good feedback from the advisory group as well. And just one slide to summarise some of the opportunities and joy that we've had from these workshops as well. So, for example, we had a couple of letters from the primary school talking about what they got from it, and they're excited to see the finished comic and show us their finished comic and things like that. One little nugget that I like to share about the primary school workshop that says a lot, I think, to me at least, is that when I went into the school on the second day, presented to the class about the project and talked about some of the themes that had come up at the care home the day before, and then we made the comics. Every single child who'd been at the care home included the residents in their comic, while none of the others did. So to me, that kind of shows just how important it is to get these in-person, intergenerational conversations going. The quote below that, very engaging, pleasant to see that the different groups have some of the same concerns about this building solidarity. And down in the right-hand side, we've got Jenny, one of our participants in the Neathport Talbot group. She's going to take the game and use it in her youth club, which is fabulous. And actually 2 other people are going to take this forward. One of the teachers that we met is going to use it in their classrooms, because you can adapt it and use it with different questions, etc. And I spoke to Amgwedd for Cymru, National Museums Wales, and they're interested in using it as well. So that's the game, again, that was developed with the advisory group ideas. So thank you for that too. And yeah, Thank you very much. So this was a quote from one of the workshops as well. So just to finish off, well, that was fun. And then Dylan had to almost be dragged out the door because he wanted to stay at the care home for a bit longer. Just to say thank you for listening, and thank you very, very much to our funders, UKRI Healthy Ageing Challenge, the Centre for Ageing and Dementia Research that supported this project throughout, the Owen Institute, which has provided some equipment and space, etc., and obviously the universities, Swansea and Aberystwyth, and really big one, our advisory group, and to our participants, without whom this research would not be possible, and for the photos as well. Thank you very, very much. Our contact details are here, and please do ask questions if you have any. Thank you. Do I stop sharing so we can open the floor to questions? There we are.
Yep.
Lovely. There's an evaluation form as well that Kim has just put in the chat, but we'd love some questions if there are any. I think, Kim, do they have to go in the chat or can people speak?
They go in the chat.
How does it work? Okay. Can you unmute everyone? Can we unmute everyone? Kim? This is all new to me, the webinar format. Let's see. Oh, participants. Yes, I can. Okay.
But by the way, just added about the that particular game. So what happens is that you have two die rather, and then you throw one of them, and it will prompt you to start your sentence with one of 6 options, and the second one you'll have another 6 options. So what it means, you've got multiple ways of starting a sentence, and what it does, it helps people to have a bit of chance decide what they're going to talk about. So it encourages people to be playful and to sometimes be a bit less shy, and it's worked really well.
Okay, well, if there aren't any questions, I see some people have had to leave anyway because it did at about the hour point. I think a few people left. But yeah, I don't know if any of the team wanted to add anything, or Laura, thanks so much for coming. If anybody wanted to add anything, please do.
Well, I'll stick my oar in, and again, this disembodied voice. But yeah, no, it's just been absolutely brilliant carrying out the activities. I haven't managed to do all of them, but I can definitely see when we've been talking to other people, certainly at the areas where we got just such a vast range of people, it really seemed to capture the imagination. It's a very visible thing, you know, because we were doing the large collages there. We had like massive bits of paper on the table, and people were sticking and gluing. And while some people were doing that, then other people were chatting and talking. And with the comic, the enlarged comic pages at the back of us, you know, it's a real great opportunity for people to see what we were doing and just all manner of conversations. It's a shame I just couldn't capture everything that everybody was saying when they came along. Some people, as I said, drew on it, but others talked, and he just thought, I want to be able to capture that. But it really does seem to be a very a great way of getting people involved in conversations, I think.
Yeah, I think I'd add to that, you know, it was the one forum where, you know, you had people coming from all over Wales, basically from each part of Wales. There were lots of very tired and hot looking parents with children who were competing, you know, one end of the day, and then other children competing the other end of the day, and that kind of thing. But we had so many conversations, and you know, it was you know, quite obvious that people are worried, and you know, that came through in quite a few of the conversations we had there. And as I said, you know, all over, we had tales of like flooding in Ruthyn. We had bees doing strange things up in northwest Wales. It was just amazing. So yeah.
Okay. If nobody has got any other questions, I recommend that we maybe let people go and have their lunch. Ali, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think also it's been good to glue this all together and to talk about it in this way, because I think it's probably the first time we've had the chance to really assemble everything like this. And because it's on Zoom, it gets made into a film. So yeah, I think hopefully we can chop up this presentation into different bits. And it's a vital part of the project has been about telling the story and excessive documentation at times, because it's not just, you know, the act of research isn't just writing things on paper. It's actually about you know, stopping and reflecting as we go through, and I think that's in the strength of this project, and talking today has been part of that, really. And yeah, please get in contact if you like any of the ideas, and please get in contact if you want to know a bit more about how they work. Please check out Laura's work, because I'm sure she'd be great for other people to work with as well. So yeah, it's been an intense period, but I think we've kind of done this work at a really important time, and hopefully some of the ways that we've been leading, well, facilitating conversations, like going for a walk, using collage, using a kind of a storyboarding approach, is something that all of us can just pick up and use, because these are vital conversations, and I've certainly learned a lot from my conversations with my grandparents in the past, and I think as it's good to have these intergenerational dialogues, really.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming along.